everybody. Welcome to Keep Me Up. I'm Shane, as always. Well, always second episode. Thank you all for tuning in, and I think we're doing good. Had some technical difficulties the other day when we started, so I think we worked those out. What's keeping you guys up tonight? Something that I always think of is, am I going to achieve my dreams? And of course, the fear is that none of us will ever achieve our dreams, and what does that mean for ourselves and for the life we want to build? But thankfully today, I'm not going to be all down and sour about it. I have a friend. Her name is Jaclyn Rodriguez, and she is achieving her dream now. Jackie, you're on the air. Say hello.
Hi.
Very engaging. Thank you. So,
Hello.
to give you a little background about Jackie, she is a culinary chef, especially in, I guess, what, baking and pastries and whatnot.
Pastry, yeah.
Yes, and give us a little bit of your history and your background in that world.
So I originally got my degree in visual arts and new media, so an artist. And, of course, not many jobs as a fine artist. So, that led to a lot of different things and nothing that I was super happy with, especially working a 9 to 5. And that wasn't the dream. So
It never is.
No, never. I mean, for some people it is, and that's cool. But I had always loved to cook and bake and things like that. So I had always wanted to go to culinary school, and I just one day I did it. I finally decided it was time, and so I went to culinary school in New York City, International Culinary Center.
Wasn't that down? That used to be down on Broadway near Canal, right?
Yeah.
That's not there anymore, is it?
Soho. I actually just found out they're closing. So they're actually joining another school, and they're closing the building. So that's super sad. But it was literally the best time of my life. I had so much fun.
How long does it last for?
What's that?
How long does that last for, culinary? The one you went to, at least.
It depends. I did a 9-month program, so it's pretty quick. But I made a lot of friends, made a lot of great connections. A lot of famous people went to that school, so I had a lot of opportunity to meet a lot of famous chefs, which was really awesome.
That's awesome.
And after that, I worked for a really, really famous cake guy. If you are a fan of Food Network, he's on Food Network all the time.
Well, who is it? You can't just do that.
I should probably tell you who it is. Ron Ben Israel, the sweet genius. He had his own show for a while. And he makes these really incredible, extraordinary, massive, really, really, really expensive wedding cakes. So that was great. That was a great experience.
Was that intimidating at all? Like, what was it like? What was your mindset going into? Because I assume you always baked growing up, right? That was always a passion of yours?
Yes.
And so going into that world in New York City, I mean, you're a born and bred, Bronxite, and but going in the big city to a big, pretty famous culinary school, and then meeting all these folks, and were you nervous about the competition and what that was going to be like, if you could cut the mustard, so to speak?
Honestly, no. I didn't think about it that way. I kind of just was like, well, I love to cook, and I'm sure there are going to be people like me. The only thing I was nervous about is I was quite a bit older than everybody else in my class.
What's the average age for the people there?
Some people were straight out of high school, so they were like 18. Some people were, early, mid-20s, maybe. And I was in my early 30s.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I was like one of the oldest people in the class. And not that was intimidating, but, it was kind of like, I'm like the old lady in the class.
Did you feel like late to the party almost? Like, yeah, like starting over, right? Like, What's that sensation to feel like? Did you feel almost a sense of regret that you waited so long to, yes, Hannah, baby girl, you want to come on screen? Did you feel almost a sense of that you waited too long, or it was just the right time?
I think it was the right time for me. Looking back, if I could change things, I would have gone straight after high school.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have gone to a traditional college. I would have just gone to culinary school. But it's how it was meant to happen for me. So I wasn't regretful in that sense.
Okay, good. Did the students look at you any differently, or did you pass for a youngin'?
No. We all became friends really quickly, like the entire class, and we would hang out and stress out together. And
wow, you think that passive aggressive swipe at your age really well. I appreciate that. You must be really nervous. Anyway, so and then when working with that famous chef, what was his name again?
Ron Ben Israel.
What was that like to be with someone who's on TV and is considered a master in his field? Yeah, oh God, baby girl.
Yes.
She wants all in on this.
She's into this conversation. Oh.
Go ahead.
I wasn't nervous. I'm not the type. Maybe it's because I'm a native New Yorker. I don't get starstruck easily at all. Mm-hmm. And this might sound a little cocky, but I'm not easily impressed, and I'm not easily like, oh my God, or intimidated in that sense. If anything, I was mostly just looking forward to it and getting to put it on my resume. Like most places, though, he actually was never there. I probably only met him a handful of times, and he was like super sweet to me, super nice, really generous in, his advice and words about the industry and things like that. But I didn't actually get to work with him that much, so.
And so what advice would you give someone who's starting over it's not a late age of 30. 30 is still very young, but in that field can feel a little bit late. What advice would you give anyone who's considering going into the culinary world?
It's hard. So if you have to have a certain kind of temperament for it, especially restaurants. I never plan to go into restaurants because it's a whole different like world. Especially for women, it's really, really tough in a kitchen. During my school year of being in culinary school, I did intern at a really famous restaurant, Michelin star rated French restaurant, and it was tough. And I wanted to do it just to be positive that I didn't want to be in restaurants, even though I knew I didn't want to be in them. And I was right. It was like one of the hardest things. Like shifts are like from 2 in the afternoon to 2 in the morning. You're on your feet the whole entire time. You're sweating. You're lugging like bags of like sugar and flour, and it's a madhouse. And you're getting yelled at. And it's crazy. Some people love it and they thrive in that. For me, not so much. So.
And why?
Yeah.
Why was it more difficult being a woman in that field? I mean, I think there's an obvious answer to that, but in your own words.
Yes. It's the stereotypical thing where women don't get a lot of credit. They don't, they're treated less than, that they're not as good or they're not as talented. Mm-hmm. And then there's kind of like, the whole sexual side of it, where, and I had an experience with this, it's like this power thing, the head chefs are, they want to assert their dominance almost, and it can lead to like uncomfortable situations. So it wasn't for me, and that's okay. I knew that going in, so if it's something, somebody's thinking about, you just have to be really, really strong and know like what you're going to be up against.
Do you know if that, given the Me Too era and things, at least there being more awareness and more of an open conversation about straight sexism in the workplace. Do you think there's a possibility that maybe that's changed for the better, or do you think it's probably just something that's just present in that industry?
I think it's something that's just present. I mean, hopefully, given what's, already happened with the things like Me Too and those kind of like efforts, hopefully it's getting better. Mm-hmm. I would think. I mean, there are a ton of amazing, famous female chefs, so obviously it can be done. You just can't be afraid, and you have to kind of have a backbone.
Did it kill your love for the industry at all, or the art?
No.
Good.
No.
Okay, that's good. And so then, what was your next step after that?
Well, after working for Ron Ben, I worked for a bunch of different bakeries, and the plan was always to kind of start my own business. Never wanted to have a boss again, so I started a cake business because that's where my true love lies, is creating cakes, especially because having first an art background, I'm able to be really creative, and it's just kind of like another outlet for that, because I paint a lot on my cakes, do a lot of sculpture, so it kind of goes hand in hand. Yeah. So then I got back into the art thing, funny enough, and I missed it a lot, regular studio art. So I also teach, and while doing that, I was given an opportunity to write a book.
You wrote a book?
I wrote a book. Wait, was I not supposed to say that yet?
No. You say it whenever you say it. So now on the screen actually is the title of the book, which is?
Advanced Home Baking. You're going to laugh at me. The title is kind of long, so I always forget.
Well, I have it right here. It's Advanced Home Baking, Recipes for Mastering Sweet and Savory Bakes.
Yes.
Who came up with that title?
I actually didn't. It was the publishing company that I worked with. It's kind of interesting. It's not a traditional sort of publishing house. They create the manuscript themselves, and basically they search for the author, and the author then essentially fills everything in. So they came up with it, and they had this idea of looking for somebody who could teach the home baker some more advanced skills.
Okay, and how did they find you? And who are they, first of all?
They. Callisto Media is the name of the publishing house.
And how did they find you?
I had a friend, when I first graduated college, I worked for an online art and design college, and I had made a friend there. His name is Andy, and he's a fantastic artist himself, a really great like graphic designer. I think he does, and like illustration. And I met him then, and this was back when I was like 25, I think, so over 10 years ago.
And this is long. You met him long before you went to culinary school too.
Yeah.
So this is something that kind of came full circle.
Yeah. And typical thing, we stayed friends on like Instagram and Facebook. Never really talked though. And I think he also likes to cook. So when I went to culinary school, I would post the things I would make and things like that. So he would always comment, that looks really great, or how'd you do that? And so he then got a job at this publishing company, and he messaged me out of the blue. And like I said, we never talked. But he sent me a message, and he's like, "Have you ever thought about writing a book?" And I'm like, "Yes, of course." Like, it's always been on my, to-do list to write a cookbook. And I never, ever thought it would happen so quickly, like, ever. I thought I was going to have to, write it and then shop it around and be turned down a bunch of times and just have to go through the process. But I really lucked out, and I sent in a writing sample, and they loved it, and within like a week, I started writing a book.
That's amazing. So I'm talking with my friend Jaclyn Rodriguez, who is the author of Advanced Home Baking, that comes out August 4th, correct?
Yes.
August 4th.
It's available for pre-order now, and it'll be in stores on August 4th.
Yes, and if you're interested in it, it's what, $19.99?
$19.99.
All the link to pre-order it and all the places that it will be available are in the description of this video. So going back to something that was always on your bucket list was to write a book.
Mm-hmm.
What was the drive behind that, and where was it on your to-do list, so to speak?
First, I actually always wanted to write a children's book. When I was in art school, I wanted to write and illustrate a children's book, and I never got around to it. One of those life things where you're like, oh, I'm eventually going to do it, I'll do it, whatever, and you never do it. But the idea was always there. I always wanted to write some kind of book. To me, it was kind of like, what's going to be my contribution to the world? That's kind of like tangible, Mm-hmm. So a book was it. And then I went to culinary school, and I love cookbooks. I collect them. I have an entire bookshelf. I probably have like over 50 of them. And Shane, I was telling you this earlier, I read them like books. So I just have always thought it would be super cool to have my own sitting on my shelf.
And so what were you waiting for to do it?
Definitely going to culinary school. I wouldn't have felt comfortable writing anything before then. After that, I don't know. I always imagined it to be this really, really difficult process. Mm-hmm. And so I just put it off because I'm like, that sounds really hard. Like I'm going to do it someday, like we always say. I just had to figure out how. And then it just fell in my lap. Literally just out of the blue one day.
Do you think if it hadn't fallen out of your lap, do you think you would it have ended up with the same fate as the children's book? Or do you think you definitely would have made sure it happened one day?
I think I would have tried really hard to make it happen.
Okay.
I don't know when. It probably wouldn't have been this soon. It probably would have been later on. Because even now, when my friend asks me if I want to write a cookbook, and I'm like, but who am I to write a cookbook? I'm not really anybody. Why would people want to listen to my advice?
And okay, sorry, go on.
No, it's okay.
No, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'll ask the question real quick. Maybe it'll feed into something more. You saying, who am I to write a cookbook? Mm-hmm. How did that mindset factor into the offer and the realization that you have this opportunity? Did you feel like you were ready for it, or did you feel like almost conflicted to do it?
I was conflicted. It took a while for me to get on board. Not a long while, maybe like a couple weeks. Funny enough, it happened over Thanksgiving weekend, and I was actually in Florida visiting my sister, and I was starting to get all these emails, and I'm like, I'm on vacation. I can't think about this right now. I'm too overwhelmed. So I waited until I got back to New York, and I really thought about it. And I just said to myself, number one, when am I going to get this opportunity again? And number two, I did go to culinary school. I did graduate first in my class. I did, work for some really fantastic people who thought I was talented. So why not?
That's the right mindset, I think. That's brilliant. Was it a hard process getting to that confidence level and knowing that this is the right time, the right moment, and I am the right person?
Had it been just me, yes. But because I had people encouraging me to just do it, and they were like, don't think about it, just do it. Mm-hmm. That push, especially from family, especially my sister, because I was with her when I got the offer. She was just so incredibly excited, which made me excited, and then I was just like, screw it, I'm going to do it.
So support means everything.
Yeah, it definitely helped.
And so then what was the process after that? I know you said it was vastly different than what you had imagined, and kind of almost a runaway train with how quick everything moved.
Yeah, it was a really, really fast process. Normally, writing a book can take years. And this, I did it in about 8 months.
Was that your choice to do it in that amount of time, or were you given deadlines?
Yeah. I was given some very, very, very tight, strict deadlines, which I think, now that I think about it, it was a good thing because it forced me to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine a lot of writers, if they're given the opportunity to do it at their own leisure, it's kind of why it takes forever. And even my editors, they were like, we've never had somebody turn in work so quickly, because I would just sit, do it, because I wanted it off my plate. I wanted to get to the next chapter, and I just wanted to get it done. Mm-hmm. So I would kind of worked through it as quickly as I could.
That sounds extraordinarily smooth and fast. Was the process really that smooth, or were there any bumps in the road and moments where you were ready to throw your papers up in the air and be like, F this?
Yeah, all the time. I remember saying, I'm never doing this again. I don't want to write a book anymore. I don't know why I thought I could write a book. Yeah, there were many, many tough nights. I literally, all I did was teach, come home, eat something, and then just write for the rest of the night. And then do the same thing day after day after day. Any free moment I had whatsoever was dedicated to writing. And you would think they're just recipes. It's not like I have to be creative about it, but I kind of did, because I was working to kind of make sure I had some kind of voice, because it is a cookbook. I don't have that many opportunities to engage with the reader, right, without being just a straightforward recipe. So the parts where I did, I had to try to make them extra special. So that was challenging, but.
And do you feel like you got your personality comes through in it?
I hope so.
So now we have on.
I think so.
I'm sure it does. You're very good at expressing your wit and your sarcasm. So I think it's. While I haven't read it yet, but I will be pre-ordering my copy, even though I fully expect a signed copy. But no, I will. I'm sure it's great. But right now we have the table of contents up. How many recipes are in the book?
I believe I wrote about, I think 100, but I think about 80 of them, or a little over 80, maybe 85 are in the book.
I mean, to do 80 recipes 8 months is really from signing the deal to it coming out, basically, in a way, or it being ready for publishing, going to print, so to speak. So, but that 8 months is not what you had to put down 80 recipes. How much time did you actually have from diving into it to having to submit to the editors your 80 recipes?
Probably closer to 6 months.
Now that's a quick turnover. How did you go about picking the recipes that you chose? How did you go about organizing that? You said it was day and night, but what was the notion behind these specific, they're not really specific, but they're 80, but still, to be able to pump out that many and put an equal amount of love and thought into each one of them?
I actually started off with a lot of things that I loved making in culinary school, because they're just classic recipes. I was French trained, so a lot of the recipes in the book are, classic French recipes. So I kind of started from there, and then I just thought about, what would be interesting for people to sort of read and want to make, things that maybe aren't in a typical cookbook. But I was also thinking about the person who would be making these. And again, there are people who bake at home a lot, whether it's a hobby or they're really trying to, I don't know, maybe themselves think about culinary school. So I thought about things that were interesting enough, but also challenging enough. And I don't know, I kind of just pulled out whatever I thought people would want. what I think is interesting.
So you sent over a screen grab of the lemon meringue tots with lemon curd recipe.
Yeah.
Is that one of your favorites that's in the book?
Yeah. I mean, it's like, it's kind of like asking somebody to pick their favorite child. So I can't say that it's, my absolute favorite. But I do love it. It's definitely a crowd pleaser, which is also what I was thinking about when picking recipes for the book. Things that I just know people love.
Mm-hmm.
And, trying to give them something simple enough, but with ways that they can kind of make it fancier or, kind of like a showstopper.
And so there's so many cookbooks out there, and so many cookbooks have many of the same recipes. What about the recipes that you put together and the way you present it is different?
I think a lot of the recipes, not only is there a straightforward recipe, but there's a lot of like notes and little sidebars that explain why you don't do something or why you have to do something. I talk a lot about the chemistry of baking. It really is a science. It's not just, it differs from cooking in that, cooking you can throw a bunch of stuff in a pot and, you go by taste and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But baking, there's a lot of, again, science and just like chemical reactions. And if you miss this step, it's not going to come out. And so I really go into that. And I think in a way that's kind of approachable. It's not boring, I hope. But really just explaining why you do things, which I think can be interesting to people. Because a lot of times people are like, well, what's the difference between baking soda and baking powder? Why do I have to put one versus the other? And I go into that and I tell you what.
Sorry. She was laying down all nice and good, and then she woke up. All right. So chemistry is a big part of it. So it's like cooking meth. I like that.
Yeah.
I just finally finished Breaking Bad, so now meth is on my mind.
Finally.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but so now that it's all done, and advanced home baking recipes for mastering sweet and savory bakes by Jaclyn Rodriguez, who we have on the air right now, is done, and you are 2.5 weeks away from it coming out on August 4th. I guess first start with when the final edit came back and it had received the stamp of approval and it was done, to knowing it was going to print, to right on the cusp of it coming out, your first published work. What's that like?
It's very cool. It's very cool. It's a little nerve-wracking too. I want it to be successful, and beyond that, I want people to like it. I want them to enjoy it, and I hope it's like really helpful. So it's a little nerve-wracking, but I really am very excited and proud of myself. It was hard. It is really hard to write a book, and I'm just proud of myself for doing it, and kind of like checking it off my list of things that I've always wanted to do.
And do you feel, given everything that's going on in 2020 with COVID and whatnot, does that add an extra layer of nervousness to the release because everything is different now? Not everyone is doing stuff in the kitchen that's extra and getting extra ingredients, and it's not going to be where people can stumble across your book as easily on the store shelf or whatnot. Does that add almost an extra like, oh, I wish it was next year, or I wish this had happened a year earlier, or something like that?
I guess a little bit. When this all first happened, I got a lot of calls, especially like from family and friends, asking me if the book was still coming out. Given what was going on, and I was like, yeah, I think, I don't see why it shouldn't. But yeah, totally. I think I choose to think about it as, maybe people are more into cooking now because they're home and they can't go out. So maybe, this will inspire them to do, a little something extra in the kitchen.
That's a good way to look at it.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I certainly can't control anything time-wise, and I feel fine that it's coming out now. I think, again, it was meant to be now. So
We have a question for you from one of our viewers. Do you use fondant for any of your recipes?
Do.
I don't have any
Yes.
clue what that is.
It is like a sugar dough or like a sugar paste. You use it to cover cakes with. I do enjoy using it a lot. A lot of clients don't like it. They don't like the taste of it. They don't like to eat it. And I try to remind them constantly, you can just peel it off. You don't have to actually eat it. But it gives a really beautiful finish to the cake. It makes it look really, kind of neat and really.
So it's like
really
a veneer almost for the cake?
Nice. A what?
Like a veneer for the cake or something?
Sort of, yeah. It's like a covering, yeah. And you can do really cool things on it. I love to use it because, like I said before, I like to paint on it with food coloring. So you can do a lot of really cool stuff with it.
Is that like what they print the pictures on when they put someone's face or something on the cake? Is that
No.
that? Okay, I don't know. I don't know. What and can you find that in like fondant? Am I saying it correctly? Fondant?
Fondant.
Fondant. Can you find the fondant on almost any recipe if you choose to use it or no?
No, I mean, it's mostly for cakes.
Okay.
I talk about it a little bit in my book. It's not something a home user is probably, comfortable using or even has a need to use. But I do talk about it a little bit because I certainly use it a lot.
What's one of the recipes you're using it?
In the book?
Yeah.
I don't have one specifically in the book. I just talk about how to use it and what it's for and things like that.
So that leads me to a good question. So this book is more than just the 80 recipes. There's technique and advice and whatnot. Tell us about that. What else is in this book?
Yeah. So in the beginning, there's kind of like a little glossary of terms that I constantly use throughout the book to familiarize yourself with them first. And again, throughout all of the chapters, in the beginning of each chapter, there's kind of like a little blurb about, what we'll be going over. As well as in the beginning of the book, I also talk about different ingredients, what you should probably always have in your pantry as an advanced baker. Specific tools that you should have at home as an advanced baker too, that you probably, want to purchase at some point.
Or what are some essentials that aspiring bakers need to have?
So my book is written using the metric system. That's what I learned in culinary school. So we weigh everything. So my advice, if you have nothing else, you should buy kitchen scale. Yeah, so you can weigh everything out because, a lot of people, a 1 cup to me is maybe not the same cup as you, and we certainly don't have the same measuring cups, right? So, yours could be a little off. You could, like, a heaping spoon to me could, be different to you. So the only way to get a precise bake is to weigh out your ingredients because then it's foolproof every time.
This is why I ask for 4 sugars in my coffee and Dunkin' Donuts, because 4 sugars to me is different than everybody else. So,
right.
my 2 spoons is everyone else's 4 spoons. So that speaks to me directly. So now that, I know it's not even out yet, but of course artists are always looking to that next project and looking just over the horizon. What's next?
I'm taking a little bit of a break, but I already do want to write a second cookbook. The next one I would love to do solely about cakes. That's what I love to do. I would like to get a lot more in depth. And I would like a little bit more control with the second book. The first book, it was great. It was a great experience, but I didn't have as much control over specifically what I wanted to write about or even like picture-wise and things like that. And I think on the next one, I would like to make it more me.
Time to renegotiate.
Yes. Maybe not with the same publishing company though. I think I would have to do it the traditional way. Simply because it's a really fast turnaround with the publishing company that I work with, and I can't do that again. I can't do a book in 6 months again. So
That's fair. So if they
we'll
call,
see, though.
so if on
Never say never.
August 5th they're like, "This is a huge success, let's do it again."
I mean, it depends on what that money is about. So
That's right. Get that
never.
money. Get the
Right.
goat.
What that contract looks like.
That's very cool. So, are you still doing freelance cake work for events and people and whatnot?
So, given the state of the world, I decided not to right now, just because it's just a little crazy right now, especially in the food industry. It's really, really, really hard right now on restaurants and just the whole industry as a whole. I can't even imagine what it's going to look like in the coming months or years. So for right now, I'm taking a little break from that, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Does that keep you up at night? The worrying about, I'm sure you know plenty of people in the food industry and that they're hurting big time. And what's that like?
I don't. It's crazy. Even like these incredibly accomplished, established chefs who have all these restaurants, they're closing because they can't afford to keep it open. And like if they can't make it, for somebody like me, it's a little scary. But you have to take it day by day and just have to see what happens.
Do you think that the food industry was, I mean, I'm sure it's a case-by-case basis, but that the food industry on the whole has been able to adjust as best as possible given takeout orders and outdoor seating and taken care of? Do you know people who have been taken care of by their managers, or it's just kind of been, that's it, sorry, you're done, there's nothing we can do?
I know some people, they were let go and then brought back, but it's still kind of not the same thing. I mean, even going back to a restaurant and working, while they're happy to be working, they're also concerned for their health. It's just a kind of still a scary time, and even with like the outdoor seating and things like that, I've heard people say like, this is crazy, I don't know why we're doing this. So
would you encourage people to go out and not just take out and pick up, but to actually sit down and have a meal at outdoor seating? Do you encourage people, or is it a double-edged sword of you want your friends and the industry to be supported as best as possible, but then is it worth the risk? Is it worth the risk for the people still working in the industry? Like, do you have any mixed feelings about that, or do you have a firm look on it?
I think at the end of the day, it should really be up to, the specific restaurants talking to their staff and saying, are you okay with this? Do you feel safe? Do you feel comfortable? Mm-hmm. And if they are, then figure out a plan that's comfortable for everybody. Me personally, I still think takeout is the best way, and deliveries. I personally don't feel like I would feel comfortable right now, even sitting out, eating at a restaurant. It's still too uncertain, and people are still crammed in there. And I'm like, you might as well be inside in the air conditioning if you're going to be that packed together. And obviously, you can't wear a mask while you're eating. So it's just, I don't know. I think it's still a little too uncertain to kind of go that route. But absolutely, takeout and curbside and all that kind of stuff is great.
Very cool. So, I mean, overall, to sum it all up, you feel like you made a dream come true?
I do. I do.
What's that? What's that feel like?
You know what? I don't know that it's quite hit me yet. The day I was told that I was allowed to finally tell people, because I did I did have to keep it a secret for a long time. I did tell, my close friends, and of course my family knew, but I wasn't allowed to really say anything about it. So the excitement of that was, really overwhelming, just to let people know what I've been working on for, quite a bit of time now. That felt amazing. I don't know that it's quite hit me yet though, that I've actually authored a book and it'll be out there in the world. Maybe I think once I'm able to go to a store, and pick it up, then it'll seem more real, but it's very cool.
It is very cool, and I'm very proud of you, and your knowledge of the industry is amazing, and your insight and sharing your experiences and your take on everything that's going on both in the world and your approach towards baking. The book is Advanced Home Baking, Recipes for Mastering Sweet and Savory Bakes by Jaclyn Rodriguez. It's out August 4th. You can pre-order it now on Amazon, I believe, correct?
Yeah.
And
Barnes & Noble, Target, a bunch of other ones.
A bunch of other ones. They're all in the description for the video. And anything else you want to share with us? Any other things that keep you up at night, or feelings you have on anything we've discussed?
No, I don't. Well, what about you? What's one of your dreams that you're hoping to accomplish?
Oh God, so many.
If you haven't already, I'm sure you have.
I have. I mean, I've definitely, had different accomplishments in my life, but we don't have enough time right now to get into all that today. This episode is about you and your dream and your accomplishment. I'll definitely have plenty of time to kind of delve into my psychosis and everything going on with all the dreams feel like I've squandered or achieved or did a little bit of both. But, you're not flipping this back around on me tonight, damn it. But
all right,
I guess the real message is buy the book. But
what?
Buy the book. That's the real message. Buy the book.
Yeah, buy the book.
Buy the book. All right. Well, I think that's a show. Again, Advanced Home Baking, Recipes for Mastering Sweet and Savory Bakes by Jaclyn Rodriguez. Thank you, Jaclyn, for being on the show, for keeping our audience up tonight. We had a peak viewing audience of 8 people at one point, with an average of 5. So thank you, everyone who watched. Please like, share, subscribe. We're on the Instagram page at Keep Me Up Podcast. And please hit that bell icon for notifications. But if you don't, that's cool. Thank you for watching. Thank you again, Jaclyn. Please check out the book. It'll be worth your while. I've tasted her goods, and they're amazing. Cake, muffins, whatever it might be. She's a brilliant chef, and it'd definitely be worth your time. So everybody, be good to each other, and go to sleep.